Welcome to the Leaderonomics show. My name is Caroline, and we have here today Jonas Prising, who is the CEO of ManpowerGroup, and definitely a very recognizable name when it comes to knowing the labor market and the trends around it. Thank you for being with us, Jonas.
Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Malaysia and welcome to the Leaderonomics show.
Thank you.
Now, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Malaysia today and what brought you to this industry overall?
Well, I might actually start a little bit earlier than that because I came to Malaysia the first time in 1987. And I was a student at university and I wanted to spend a year out in Asia. And I spent a fabulous year working, studying and traveling in Malaysia between the years of 87 and 88.
Was that a gap year?
I took a gap year because I wanted to get some experiences in what I thought was a very dynamic region, and that turned out to be absolutely the case. And of course, at the same time, I fell in love with Malaysia as a country, which meant I immediately had to come back in the early 90s and spend many years being based and traveling and working here in Asia.
Wow,
so I have a long history with Malaysia and a very nice history of Malaysia, which repeats itself, I think, in modern days, because I am here on the occasion of visiting our operations here. We've been present in Malaysia since 1997. We have and work with about 6,000 people here in Malaysia on in any given year.
Right.
And we have a very successful business, a diversified workforce solutions company here in Malaysia that I'm delighted to visit, say hello to the team, hear how they're managing to do all the great things and the great results they're producing, and of course also think about the future and the future opportunities for growth here in Malaysia.
And what do you see of that so far, of this future, since this time round, coming back to Malaysia after 30 years of being here, do you foresee any difference in the future of what you saw then, which made you come back, and the future now?
Well, some things apparently don't change. When I lived and worked here last time, Dr. M was the Prime Minister. I come back 30 years later, Dr. M is the Prime Minister again.
Yes.
But overall, I would say we are very optimistic about our prospects for our business in Malaysia. We think Malaysia as a country has a lot of assets that can make it very competitive and successful, navigating a changing and sometimes volatile external environment. But I think Malaysia has a number of assets that are very, very strong. Access to skilled talent, and openness to bringing talent in if they don't have it, good knowledge of English, which is a competitive advantage as the world is really moving towards English as the business language in many cases. So we're feeling very good about the future prospects for our business in Malaysia, but also for the prospects of Malaysia as a whole.
I'm really glad to hear that. And do you see any trends in terms of, because you work with teams worldwide, right? And based on Malaysia's geographical location, culture, do you see any trends that's different or maybe the same with the rest of the world?
You know, it's very interesting to us that, many of the trends that we see impacting labor markets are increasingly similar. When you think about it, of course, labor markets in the past used to be highly geographic in terms of what happened depended on the local legislation, the local situation, the local economy. And of course, those are all things that are still true. But increasingly, technology is borderless and impacts countries at the same speed and with the same impact. So if you want to leverage technology as an exporter or as a manufacturer and as a professional services company, you're leveraging technologies that are widely available on a global basis, which means your skill levels that you're looking for have to be globally compatible. So the demand for a skilled workforce is increasing very rapidly across the world because that's how you increase your productivity leveraging these new technologies. And that's why we're seeing a similar evolution across labor markets. Of course, global trade impacts, companies in a much bigger way today than it used to in the past. And we are truly globally interconnected in many, many ways. So paradoxically, what we've really seen of this idea of a local labor market is really starting to be impacted not only by the economic cycle within a country, but also by structural changes to a much greater degree than it's ever been the case in the past.
So what you're saying is the barriers to entry is actually lessened, and the barriers to exit is also lesser. So everybody, that whole mobilization is going on so strongly in the global world right now.
Yes, it's moving at a very quick pace, and that provides tremendous opportunities, but it also provides tremendous challenges.
Right.
Because things are not evolving at a steady and slow pace as they may have done in the past. The change is accelerating, and organizations as well as countries are all scrambling to adopt this new environment, where whether you like it or not, you have to be competitive on a global arena, and countries are choosing how to navigate that change and to position themselves for future prosperity and growth, and they have to do that in an environment that's changing much quicker than it used to in the past.
Yes, and in fact right now in Malaysia, I think we are still facing that talent shortage, things like that, and I'm sure that's in quite a number of places. Yeah, and I don't know, do you see Manpower playing an active role in addressing issues like this?
Well, this is of course a lot of our business is making the match between companies that are looking for a skilled workforce and talent, as well as for individuals that have skills, and putting them together, both on a temporary basis as well as on a permanent basis, at all of the different skill levels that you can imagine, both within manufacturing, administrative, and clerical, all the way up to IT and cybersecurity specialists and engineers and accountants. So it's a broad range of skills, and it's really across the spectrum. And this skills shortage is due to, in some countries, in most countries, a lot of the structural changes that are happening.
Right. Very interesting that, so many things that's happening at the same time, but I think there are ways around it as well with the globalization. Thank you for that interesting conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break and we'll come back shortly. Hi, welcome back to the Leaderonomics show. We have now Jonas Prising, the CEO of ManpowerGroup, with us.
Thanks, Caroline.
Jonas, yourself as the leader, we would like to really understand a little bit more about how you think about leadership and how necessary. Where does it all begin on leadership? What do you think? Where does leadership development begin?
When I think about great leadership or leadership, I think about it in 4 dimensions.
Okay.
First of all, leaders have to be capable, doing what they're tasked with doing and leading the organization, which is necessary but not sufficient.
Okay.
They also have to have a bias for action. So leaders tend to be the ones that are driving the change, driving the initiative, setting a direction, and doing that in a way that mobilizes the organization. But what I think are 2 really important additional aspects of leadership is that it's others before self. So you have to have an altruistic mindset. When I think about my own leadership, I'm very clear about the fact that it is a very important role in my position to prepare the company for future success, and I do that by helping my team members be more successful, and removing the obstacles that they have to fulfill, their dreams and passions, because in the end that is going to guarantee the success of our organization. And lastly, having a strong moral compass and ethical values is also extremely important from a leadership perspective. The organization follows the head. And whatever is perceived to be acceptable behavior, acceptable mindsets, thinking about situations is the way, and that leader exhibits, is the way the organization behaves. And those are the 4 really important dimensions of leadership that I think about as I do my work and I convey messages to the organization to ensure that I am mindful of all of those 4 dimensions.
Right. And where do you think all this began? At what point in time?
Well, I'm of the school of thought that says that this is something that you can learn.
All right.
You can, by purposefully and deliberately trying to evolve and acquire skills as well as a mindset, you're able to adopt a lot of this. I don't think that leaders are necessarily born. I think you can truly, if you apply yourself, acquire many of the things that would make for a great leadership.
Would you have some advice how to inspire people to aspire to be a leader?
Leadership has to be authentic.
Right.
And if you're going to be inspiring people and motivating to do things that they either think they couldn't do or that they would get excited about doing, I think you have to be authentically passionate about what it is that you do. And as it relates to my own role and my job at ManpowerGroup, I am passionate about what we do. I'm passionate about joining the organization 20 years ago. And for the same reasons, I am passionate about all the work that our 30,000 employees are doing across 80 countries on any given day. And I think that's really important to convey, but also to be very authentic about. Because in the end, if you don't authentically believe it and you feel it, you're not going to come across as sincere, and the organization is going to see that.
It will show true.
Yes, it will show true.
Now, with all these years, based on your personal experience, can you share with us some leadership insights that you have gained along the way?
Well, the most obvious one is that, whilst the leader is important, the leader's importance is measured by the team that he or she is able to build.
All right.
It's never about one person. It is about a team effort. And your ability as a leader to collect and create a cohesive team, articulate a vision and a strategy to achieve that vision, and enable your team members to apply their capabilities and drive and motivation to achieve that is what makes leaders successful. And I think sometimes that's, as you get more senior in an organization, you get convinced of your own infallibility and your own supremacy as a all-knowing leader who has all the answers. And I think that's one of the big traps as people are moving up through an organization, that it's really all the way, and certainly in my role, the most important aspect of my leadership and how we are going to be successful is to ensure that we have the talent that we need that can execute our strategies, and that's what I focus a lot of my time on.
And if that's one trap that happens to ensnares a lot of people, what would you advise? How can people kind of get around it or even solve this challenge that's facing them?
Self-awareness is a very useful trait, and if nothing else, something to practice and understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and making sure that you make a deliberate effort to address those weaknesses by having people with the talent and the capabilities that can compensate for those weaknesses. But I think knowing that this is an important aspect, and that the world is changing so quickly that it's impossible to know everything yourself. But you have to have a team with the capabilities and insights to help you navigate and to make the right business decisions so that the business can be successful in the long term.
Right. It seems to me that you're talking about succession planning in a way.
Talent within the organization is the key competitive advantage, certainly for us at ManpowerGroup, but I think for many organizations.
Right. And in this succession planning and managing the talents, what is some of your learnings about what can be a talent management strategy that would work?
Well, the understanding of which areas and which capabilities that you need to have to be successful are, of course, the starting point of talent and succession planning.
Right.
But also to have a very clear desired outcome. So in our case, we have a very clear view. I personally have a very clear view that when I retire from my role as chairman and CEO, I would like to have a slate of candidates that are internally grown, and at least one of them has to be a woman. Because we believe that diversity provides diversity of thought, which drives better business results. And we see that in our business today, but we're certainly convinced of that in the future as well. So if you do that and you start your succession planning with an outcome in mind, and then you work backwards, you're actually able to establish pretty clear milestones of what kind of people you need in what kind of positions, with what kind of exposure, experience, and education. And that way you can create an internal pipeline of talent that is able to succeed and then able to carry the organization forward to greater heights.
Yes, and very good to hear about your inclusiveness of women in leadership. And I think it's beyond women, but it's really the diversity of thinking, the diversity of ethics, everything that really gives us that performance that we did in our organizations. Right, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back soon. Welcome to the Leaderonomics show. My name is Caroline, and today we have Jonas Prising with us, who is the CEO of the ManpowerGroup. Jonas, we're going to have a segment right now where we're going to be playing a fun game. It's called Tinkinomics. And let me explain to you how it will work. Okay? So we have some cards here, and we have a timer. So in 1 minute, try to answer as many questions as you possibly can.
Perfect.
Right, okay. So I'm just going to pick some cards here. Here we go. I'm just going to shuffle them a little bit.
All right.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay.
And we start.
Ready and focused.
Yes. And we start now. Right. If you had a chance to empower a certain community, which would it be?
Students.
Great. Is it possible to know the truth without challenging it first?
Yes.
Everyone says leadership begins with you. How true is that statement?
Very true.
Very nice. What is one sport currently not in the Olympics that should be included?
See, this is the hardest question you can ask. What's the sport played in Malaysia where you kick the ball over the net with your feet and place 3 on each that's now being played? There you go. That's the sport that needs to be in the Olympics. A high degree of skill, very difficult to master, immensely entertaining, and includes a ball. That's all I need to say.
Very
perfect.
Nice. Okay, what would you do if you didn't have to earn money in order to survive?
Teach.
Very beautiful answer. How should a company really give back to the community?
Really take its role of not only providing great results and returns for shareholders, but viewing this as a mission of really serving all stakeholders and doing that in a sincere and authentic way. And in our case, it's all about educating the future workforce.
Right. Nice. Thank you. 1 minute's up, and let's see. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my gosh, you have 6 answered in 1 minute. That's great job. Thank you,
especially
Jonas.
since the Malaysian sport that I chose took me the longest to answer and figure out.
And you got that in like less than a minute. That's tremendously good. All right, and just to finish up a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So, because you have been a leader for a really long time now, and we really just want to learn a little bit more about it, right? So how do you really stay at the top of your game?
I try to have a great degree of humility in terms of what I know, and a great deal of curiosity about the things I want to learn about. And I think that's a way to stay fresh, to stay open to outside influences, learn new things, because the world is changing very quickly. And I think this is a really important capability for leaders in an age of digital disruption. Because as the organizations change, business models change, you have to be looking outside and get outside views and learn about new things, because you're unlikely to get to where you want to be by just extrapolating how you got there in the first place. So the future, the past will not necessarily predict your future success. And that's of course one of the most important roles for leaders, is to help navigate where the company is going to go in the future.
Right. It's like a learning quotient. Is that where you're going? Right.
Yes.
And are there any great leaders that you yourself reference to?
There's lots of great leaders. Now, if you take the dimensions of, capable, bias for action, altruistic, and a strong moral compass, of course, you're thinking about leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. You're thinking about people like Nelson Mandela. I mean, those are truly leaders at a superior dimension that are always important to try and observe and learn from.
Right. It's really nice to hear from you about all this, but we still need a little bit more from you in terms of the leadership nuggets that you can share with our viewers. So, last two questions, right? First one is, if there's one piece of leadership advice that you can give to new managers, what would that be?
That would be to apply a great deal of humility and work with your team. Your success as a manager is going to depend on your ability to make your team successful. Many new managers, myself included in my early years, thought that I thought my success largely depended on me being the hardest working and the smartest person in the room. But I very quickly learned that does only get you so far. Real success comes from the success of the team and enabling your team to be successful, which gives you the ability to be successful as a manager.
And interestingly, that's the same thing that you said earlier about CEOs. So whether you're a new manager or CEOs, that's kind of the bottom line.
That is the bottom line, but it's easy to forget because as you move up in the organization, you know, especially if you're heading up an organization, you're at the pinnacle of your career, you're at the pinnacle of all the knowledge and all the experience and all of your profession, so it's easy to slip back into the, you know, I got here because of who I am, not because of the people I work with. So I think that's a really good lesson to keep in mind, and certainly important to keep in mind when the environment is changing quickly. But I actually think it's a timeless lesson.
Right. And one more advice that we need from you is, what about fresh graduates? How different is that? What would be your advice for fresh graduates?
My advice for fresh graduates is to always do the things that you're passionate about. We know that your likelihoods of success in your career is very strongly correlated with you doing something that you're enjoying and that you're passionate about. You know, so the idea that you try to do things because you think they're the right thing, but you don't really enjoy it, that tends to not work out so well. So go with your heart, go with the skills that you have, be passionate about what you do, and if you don't like it, change. You're of a generation, if you're just coming into the workforce, who's going to be working for more than 50 years. So you'll want to make sure you make the right choices, but you also don't have to be worried about making mistakes and trying different things. You're going to build great experiences, and that would be what I would suggest to new graduates entering into the workforce.
Very sound advice. Given this age and time, I think that's really very sound advice. Thank you, Jonas, for being on the show, and thank you for sharing all these leadership nuggets with us, which I'm sure the viewers would definitely appreciate. From fresh graduates to managers to CEOs, you have a piece of advice for everybody.
Thank you, Caroline. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.